You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
What's up, everyone, guys? Welcome back to the Meta Show. Hope you're all enjoying your weekend. Thanks for joining myself, Mittani, and our special awesome guests this week, Thoric Frosthammer, on today's show. We have a little to talk about Nullsec, then we have a lot to talk about for CCB Please and with our special guests. So we're going to jump into that real quick, but just kick things off, guys, now onto the Tweet Fleet Slack. There is a new public channel. It's called TMC-public, where you can speak to the writers and streamers for TMC.
I think that before we get into anything, what we really should do is troll Laz about his hangover. I think that is the best thing to do, because we can't really have a serious start to a meta show, and that was actually the most serious, like, we're all very grim-faced and we're all very serious here kind of thing. But
I rolled through it pretty well. I mean, there's no stumbling or anything. I mean,
I was told I couldn't bring an air horn on to really.
Poor Laz.
Hypno-Kitty's gonna start going off too. It's
I know. This is basically like the hangover nightmare. But I think you're handling it pretty well. Like, we got a grit out of you. So everybody be gentle to Laz. Like, if we have to. I'll try to be the funny one, which is always bad. When I'm funny, bad things happen because I'm not very funny. But yeah, before we get into drama. Because holy fuck, drama! Like this was sort of expected, but also dumb and easily avoidable with the CSM white paper changes, which have been essentially targeted in the view of the Imperium and most of our directorate. And we'll be asking Thoric what he thinks about it. Changes which specifically target games journalists after the CSM has been around for like 10 iterations of CSM. Now it's really important to have the rules that are changed, and the way in which the rules are changed only excludes Sion Kumitomo, who is, of course, the number one, I think, vote getter of the last two elections. So the person who is the most democratically elected representative is now abruptly to be excluded from this, but it totally has nothing to do with him, and how dare you? How dare you, sir? How dare you suggest that this has anything to do with Sion Kumitomo rather than
Nothing at all.
A perfectly legitimate and expected reasonable adjustment in the CSM white paper?
you're skipping way ahead now. Come on.
I'm just giving people a little preview. It's going to be rantastic. It's going to be awesome. Laz has got a hangover. I got to kind of step it up, right? So
he's going to yell loudly on the Meta Show the entire time.
It's going to be awesome.
One quick shout out, guys. Marco Borchio Canton, 12 months. Thanks so much for the year, bro. Schwab Boy with the 15 months. Wow. Nice.
That's a lot.
I'm using your username with the 12 months as well. Earl of Fay with 10 months. And Joel Snug with the year. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, Joel, there was no drinking on stream last night. I went out bar hopping with some people I met on the internet.
Some friends. Our boy done good. People are talking about having Sion on as a guest, and I do want to have Sion on as a guest, and we'll probably have him on next week. But one of the reasons why I think it was important for us to have Thoric and other voices from the CSM address this is that the people who are against Sion, while being too afraid to admit that they are against Sion. If we just have Sion as a guest to discuss this immediately, rather than talking to other members of the CSM to hear their voices, it'll be too easily written off as just us politicizing things, rather than actually speaking for a large segment of the community and what have you. So don't worry, we will get Sion on here hopefully next week. But a lot of this discussion has gone down, as Laz was bringing up, on Tweet Fleet Slack. On Tweet Fleet Slack, it's free sign up. You can just Google how to join Tweet Fleet Slack. The Imperium has its own emote today. Got a little black eagle. You can go :Imperium : a little black eagle pops up. It's awesome. And there is a Mittani.com public channel called TMC-public, and you can join there and make fun of my shirt or whatever floats your boat. All right, so I think we're through.
We're good.
Intro. I think we're good.
So I guess we're gonna jump into the Nullsec Power Hour. And there's a few fights that happened this week. I think the biggest thing that happened was the L-She fight, where Theta, Leviathans and Supers get tackled after they smart bombed a bunch of bombers. Then who came to that fight was Snuffbox, Pandemic Legion. Basically anyone that could have made it to that fight came running. There's also a really, really awesome video from Jay Amazing Us, and I will link that in chat for you guys, where it basically shows about 5 minutes mark the hammer gets dropped, and it's a pretty sweet video. You should check it out.
Noisy Gamer points out that I am wrong about Cyan being the #1 vote getter. He couldn't get enough votes to be a permanent member of the summits. Then I am wrong. Oh my. Actually, I wonder who it was. I stopped kind of paying attention for the last couple of
Manny,
seasons.
I believe, was the top vote getter this year. That worked out well.
Well, that's kind of hilarious, isn't it? That's an interesting little subtext, considering how these things work. Well, then I guess we'll stop being upset. Then if it's not, he wasn't the #1 vote getter, I guess we'll just go, okay, then you're all right, it's all fine. But back to Nullsec. This was fantastic. This was a hilarious situation. You have a lot of people who are looking for local content, where by local content we mean the Theraboys. It's an entirely reasonable and pretty cool thing. NC. and PL and a few other people who hang out in Thera will constantly be rolling holes and looking for ways to come into the Northwest and other places and find ratters to gank, ratting carriers in particular. And I think this all began with a ratting carrier getting tackled. And in theory, it's the Theta Squad of the Imperium, but what I was actually told by some of our spies, and this was posted on our EVE, which is our favorite platform for our erstwhile enemies, or our wayward enemies, I should say, in Tissue, that it wasn't actually Theta, it was all of Capswarm deployed to be able to deal with them. So it was not actually Theta Squad, it was the entirety of the Imperium's Capswarm that was responsible for this. We stand corrected.
We were wrong. We were wrong.
We're sorry.
But there's a specific reason Cyan wasn't the highest vote getter this year, which is that we deliberately voted in such a way as to get the maximum number of Imperial candidates on.
Oh, that's right. Okay. How was that, actually, that we did that, Thoric?
We split it up like Lawn and FA, and Fountain area was voting me #1. The GSF and that area was voting Cyan #1. And then everybody was just flip-flopped. I think Andy was #2 and I was #3 for everybody else. And in mine, I was #1 and then Cyan and then Andy. So he didn't get the most #1 votes simply because we had deliberately split all the #1 votes to make sure we got 3 candidates on.
This is a hilarious sort of tangent, and we are going to briefly go on this tangent before we go back to giggling about the Theta situation and that cat fight, because the STV system was implemented instead of a direct vote system. STV is the single transferable vote thing, and you essentially have to math hammer your way through a CSM election, because this was introduced after CSM 6, because the blocks organized and got a lot of representatives on, and this made some people unhappy. And so they altered the voting system in hopes of not having a bunch of block-level representatives under the CSM. So what has that done? Well, kind of like with Vazisov and Phoebe, we always say this, when you make things more difficult for everyone, only the blocks survive and it crushes everybody else. So what happened here is you have an electoral system where you actually need mathematicians to go through and optimize it and have a large brain trust to do that. We did that because the blocks can do it, and we got what we wanted just fine. And meanwhile, it's kind of an opaque question to the rest of the electorate, as to whether the votes counted, how it worked, does anybody understand this thing at all, instead of having one vote for a candidate. So, whoops. Tangent over. Let's go back to LC and this escalating cap fight, which ended up with us dropping a whole bunch of supers and titans that we don't have.
Yeah,
our dear friends.
Basically, if you look at the kill report, it's just nothing but Leviathans blapping Macarials. So it was a good day for us. Good guys win again.
That's kind of funny. Also, Noisy Gamer, as usual, is right. The reason why I don't know this is that I am... we've determined this, like, talking to people on TweetFleet Slack over the last couple weeks. I mean, we like TweetFleet Slack. It seems like a very chill place for chill people to hang out, which is why you have so many people in the Imperium there now. But what I've determined is that I really just need to accept my position as a completely frivolous figurehead for the Imperium. And that, wow, Mel Gibson, Imperium Black Eagle is the same symbol used by, oh my, well, we're not going to say that on live TV, because that's That's naughty. But thank you for the donation anyway, I guess. I'm not really sure what is up with that. Hopefully that wasn't ironic. Anyway, the funny thing about the Tweet Fleet Slack stuff is that I've noticed that people really don't seem to think that I'm in charge of anything because I wear a red shirt and I'm very silly and harmless, and I don't know where all the eye contact stuff came from, because I don't know why you would watch TV and see these kind of shows and think that I actually have anything to do with anything. It is all Scion, it's true. Scion is actually pulling all of the strings, and
in fact, Mintz has donated his goatee to Scion, I think.
Wow.
So it's not a very good donation. I don't think that really counts. I think that's sort of like a, it's not really a goatee. It's sort of like a half-ass attempt at one. But I'm all fresh-faced and youthful looking. Let's go on here. Also, in addition to that escalating catfight right on our doorstep, which we won, we ended up with CO2 today. Actually ran around Circle of Two, a very proud member of the Imperium, ran off into Nullsec and massacred a whole bunch of Snuffbox and Mercenary Coalition Macarials, building just this massive pile of skulls there. And Laz went ahead and linked that. These are basically just scuffles without any greater context. What happened with the catfight and what happened in Nullsec with CO2 today. The only real SOV action that we're seeing is taking place down in Aquarius, if you can call it SOV action, where Karma Fleet has had a deployment down to Aquarius. And in Aquarius, there's kind of an interesting situation where you have a loose conglomeration of tribes. You've got Northern Army, which is NC.'s feeder organization. You've got Pandemic Horde, which is PL's feeder organization. You've got Brave Newbies just moved in there, trying to get back into the Nullsec game. You have Phoebe Freeport Republic has moved in there, and now Karma Fleet has sent, it's just purely a Karma Fleet deployment. It is only Karma Fleet alone, and we're very proud of them for that. Karma Fleet is awesome. But they've been down there and engaging in basically just a lot of fuckery, which has resulted in some interesting pressure, because we've heard reports, which I'm sure are not true and that we're getting rused. We've heard reports that people down there on the hostile to the Imperium side have been asked to go on ratting ops to try to raise the ADMs of their area, which is kind of funny if you're in an organization that doesn't even give you SRP, no reimbursement, and you're still being asked to rat up ADMs. That's kind of a funny thing, but that's good stuff. We should be seeing some tears and chaos from there one way or the other pretty soon.
Are the Reavers down there as well, or is it just...
I don't... It's just... First of all, I have no idea what this Reavers thing that you're talking about is. That sounds like something from a science fiction TV show that I saw many years ago. I think it was called Firefly. And second of all, even if such a thing existed, this is really, it's only a Karma Fleet deployment.
Okay. Yeah, I know a group of Karma Fleet, or a Karma Fleet Ferox fleet killed my Augur Navy issue on stream the other day. Shoot blues till thou art.
Good on them. That's awesome.
It was awesome. Let's go with that. actually, it was, because after they killed me, they all sent me like 10 mil a piece. I made like 300 mil.
That's cool. Excellent. Okay, well, let's get into. We've had about. I mean, if anybody just thinks that we've missed something in particular in terms of like Nullsec drama or politics that that we're overlooking, say so in chat, and we'll go back and comment on it. I think that at this point, it's time for us to get into talking with Thoric. And do we want to do CCP Please first?
I think let's do the giveaways, and then we'll do CCP Please, which will completely. I'm sure it's going to completely go off the wire, and I'm not going to be able to control anything. So let's go ahead.
Here to help.
Let's go ahead and do the giveaways, guys.
Giveaways, awesome.
So, type in chat, guys. Follow the stream. If you have follow the stream, you cannot win. We're giving away 3 pirate rookie ship codes today. If you win, you'll need to message the channel. Message the channel with which of the 4 pirate rookie ships you want. So make sure you follow the stream. Type in chat, and we'll do the roll in just a minute.
I've got to basically make sure that I'm drinking more coffee and running my mouth more, because Thoric has always been a very stoic person, and Laz, unfortunately, I'm looking at him on Skype here, and I'm worried for my boy. Like, I'm proud of you. Like, you clearly had a hell of a bender. You were, were you wallowing in pleasure?
Of course,
like a horny white boy.
I woke up at 6 a.m., came home, and then then I went back to sleep.
Good man. Good man. Excellent. Well, we're big fans of wallowing here in the Imperium. So we're going to do, again, chat and chat, as it were. And people are typing, so do we want to do the giveaway now, or do we want to start talking for a little bit more? And
let's go ahead and do the first roll.
Okay.
So, Ms. Evil, the first win. He is a follower and a subscriber, and thanks so much for the port. Absolutely rigged. Always rigged. And then next one's going to be Mental Freeman. And after that, the McLeod, who's also a subscriber. Thanks so much, guys, for the support. Make sure you message the channel. And let's jump into CCP Power. Or Power, CCP, please.
No, it's like Power, CCP, please. So I've been running my mouth too much, and Azra Argent is pointing out that I should shut the fuck up, which is true, and let Thoric talk, which is true. So before we get into this, I'm going to ask simple questions. Thoric, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little about who you are in EVE and what your various hats are.
I'm Thoric Frosthammer. I'm the CEO of LAN, the alliance that holds about half of the Veil. And we used to be in Fountain. Before that, we were in Delve. So we've spent a lot of time off the edges of the Imperium, and that seems to sort of be our role. So we are continuing to do that. LAN's sort of a older alliance, generally speaking, compared to some of the others. We like to be mellow, but we also like to, you know, hang out with our friends, the goons, and some of the others. Basically, we're good. We're mellow. We like to hang out where the fights are. Lately, I have to say, Veil's been pretty quiet, so we're deploying elsewhere. So,
when you say that you're pretty quiet and that you're older, how do you respond to accusations that LAN has the single highest property damage count of any alliance in the Imperium when we party?
Well, that wasn't like completely our fault, I have to say. I mean, maybe a little bit, but and last year it was not us. We did not. Ours is still in one piece. We didn't have $11,000 worth of damage like the year before.
Is it because you guys were responsible for it this year?
Well, fortunately, yeah. I think this year, because we paid for our own suite, we tried to keep it a little bit more under control. I still have the somebody mailed me the damage tab that the hotel sent them. I have it tagged.
Get it framed
in my office. Yeah,
awesome.
Getting a frame for it one of these days. So.
Yeah, one of the things for viewers who haven't heard this story before is not this most recent EVE Vegas, but the one before that. Of all of the Imperium parties, LAN's ended up being the wildest. They won the CCP suite giveaway, and then it just got obliterated. And we're like, wow, this is the alliance in the Imperium that's mostly older, more mature adult gamers. And I guess, you know, age and experience clearly.
Yeah, it just means we have more experience in trashing hotel rooms. Really, is what it comes down to, and nobody found the dead hobo, so it's all good.
Hey, that's all that counts at the end of the day, right? I mean, you know, you're still taking care of the bottom line, body disposal. All right, so that's what you do as a leader in the Imperium, and you guys have, like you said, you were sort of the guardians of the borders. You're sort of on the eastern area in Veil, holding that down before you were down in Fountain and in Delve. What do you do in your position as? I mean, you're on the CSM. Why don't we talk a little bit about who you are in that context?
Well, I was the third person on the overall Imperium ticket last year. Although, as I said, we sort of divvied it up to make sure we'd get 3 people on last year. Basically, my role essentially is to sort of represent the allies in the Imperium, which is to say the folks who aren't members of GSF and may have slightly different concerns, maybe are a little smaller, maybe have other thoughts about what's important. I don't think they deviate very much from what everybody else thinks, but basically that's sort of my role as a CSM representative.
So in terms of the amount of time that you spend on CSM stuff, like how much would you say in terms of hours per week do you spend focusing on or interacting with the CSM engagement?
Early on, it was pretty substantial. I could spend 10, 15, 20 hours a week, depending on what was going on, because obviously one of the big things this year was the Null revamp, which was a very deep concern to pretty much anybody who lives in Null. So many hours were spent talking on various communications means with CCP, trying to get them to see the light on some of these things. I think in some respects we had some good successes there. I think we got some of the things that everybody agreed needed to be fixed with FozzieSov fixed. In some respects, not as much. I think one of our big successes was probably, and frankly, it's more due to that. I think the structures team of all of the people at CCP sort of have the golden touch in terms of listening to people and turning that into good content. I think people saw that at the mass test, that Citadels are really coming together. And I, all respect to them. And I think that relationship has been one of the highlights of this CSM. I think the low light has probably been the relationship with just about everybody having to do with the Nullsec changes. So, and I'll say, since the Manny thing, I don't believe we've talked. This week there was a meeting, I think, with one of the new teams, and that's basically the first team meeting I can think of since last October.
So when you say a team meeting, you mean a meeting between the CSM and developers directly?
Right.
So here's a question. How does the CSM get in these meetings? How are these meetings scheduled? What's the
generally
process?
speaking, there's a coordinator, and that coordinator is CCP Lilu, and her job is to essentially, in my view, coordinate, which is to say, be the bridge of communication that gets people to tell us what's going on so that we can ask interesting questions, and if necessary, we can try to talk to the right people and or schedule what's going on. I will have to say that interaction, to my mind, was not fine. It was not terrific to begin with, and frankly has gone completely off the rails since October.
Has the number of meetings that have been scheduled between the CSM and CCP developers by CCP Lulu, the coordinator, has that lack of meetings remained steady? Was it a lot at the first, not very much
It's diminished across the course of the whole year. I mean, early on we had some meetings, although I will say that there was a controversy at the beginning where it has been tradition that they will try to have early meetings between the CSM and some of the leading developers, just introduce, so that if you're going to be on Slack or if you're going to be on whatever means of communication that they're using, which is currently switched for the third time this CSM term to HipChat, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, it
Three
was,
switches within
it was
one
Skype.
term?
It was Skype. Then it was Slack, and now it's HipChat. So I think that's been a detriment to communication too, because a lot of people, as you switch from thing to thing, just sort of drop out, and there's fewer.
Who makes the decision to change the communication platform?
That would be Lilu, as far as I know.
So she has chosen to change the platform 3 times within this one term?
Based on feedback, evidently, that they didn't like Slack, yeah. I don't know why they switched off Skype, other than I believe it was insisted that it wasn't very secure. But, I mean, secure. Manny was pretty much evidence you can be on secure whatever, and still it's going to be an issue. I mean, I think that the basic problem is that they're just not using the CSM in the way that they ought to use it. I mean, look, it's their game. They can choose to just ignore us completely, and in which case, why have it? Just let it go. If you're not going to ignore it completely, find some useful role and treat it like a useful resource. And I've posted on my blog that I think that you really have 2 choices. Either you have to find some way to give it agency and make it a useful thing, or you have to get rid of it. Because otherwise it's just being used as a PR shield to say, look, we listen to our players. Not really. I mean,
Sorry, do you think capital focuses are going to be, or the focus groups, the issue for this, or is it just...
Well, that was a good example of, I think, Scion holding them to the fire on this issue, which is to say that he came up, well, I will say it's been mentioned in other CSMs that there needed to be a refocus on this, but he put together an entire proposal, which was at the last summit, which said, look, we could help you by running non-NDA focus groups, bring in the real experts, because while we've been elected because we're knowledgeable people who know a lot about the game, we don't know everything about the game. And particularly, we may not know everything about a particular aspect like capital ships. And so we'll bring you the best. And we're connected people. That's one thing we're good at, because we've all been elected to the position. So we can bring you the people we know who are the best. We can bring you the XTTZs for game mechanics. We can bring you the Lazes for subcap warfare, and we can bring you the Tiberizzles for cap warfare. And or if you're Sort Dragon, he can bring you the same folks from the other side of the fence. And so that was really the proposal that was being made, is let us help you. Let us help you.
When was that proposal made, approximately? If you remember?
He made it at the last summit formally.
Okay.
I think I became aware about a week before that. But it's something I supported pretty strongly, because I think my idea is, look, 95% of what they put under the NDA and think is a leak really doesn't matter. And most games would just be treated as open information on development to people. I mean, there's 5% of it that definitely needs to stay, just not even to the CSM shouldn't even know about it. Things like build costs, things that can actually result in real world manipulation of markets or pre-knowledge that's going to affect gameplay. But most of this stuff should be as public as possible, and it should just be out there, okay? And I'll point out that, by the way, when he presented it, this whole concept of focus groups to Andy Seagull, she was very for it. I mean, there was a very positive result from the upper echelons. But what's happened is that after it was directed, let's give this a try at that level, we came back from the summit. The Manny thing, was a problem. And since then, they've essentially tried to co-opt it into, okay, we'll have focus groups, but they're going to be run by devs. And
so what you're saying is that, I mean, sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify this. So the focus group system that we are seeing as implemented currently didn't exist before Scion proposed it at the previous summit?
They've had focus groups before, obviously. And but what they did not have was sort of this proposal for a more organized method of doing them, where the CSM could intermediate and help them pick people, help them get the right people involved. You could have a mix. You could have something where there's a public invite via, like they've done for these other focus groups, and then there's people suggested by. And I will say that for the Capitals group, that was kind of the case, the focus group that's currently out there. For the T3D, it was pretty much Fozzie sort of stepping on the whole idea. He went out there, he started a focus group, and that flopped, frankly, because what happened? He decided he was too busy to run it. Nothing ever happened of it. There's still people in it. I'm in it. They sit around sort of going, hey, if anybody's listening, I have some thoughts. I mean, Suetoni has put some excellent thoughts in there about T3Ds and what they should be done with them. And it's just, it's yelling into a vacuum. And the Capitals one's a little better, but it's still basically empty.
If Scion is one of the responsible parties for proposing an organized focus group, and you have suggested that CCP in certain areas has co-opted this and implemented it without the same sort of guidance. If Scion is providing this value that's value enough for CCP to take it and try to implement it in some capacity, why then, in your opinion, is the changes have been made to the white paper that specifically excludes Scion in effect?
I guess my feeling is that he tries to make them work, and he tries to hold them a little bit accountable. And apparently that's not well appreciated. That's frankly my opinion from viewing the whole thing.
Is that an opinion?
I'm sorry, I have to pause. Somebody's calling me with an emergency.
Okay. That's the everything is on fire. Well, that's interesting because that means that we have to sort of pause in the sort of inquisition here. I actually didn't realize that the focus groups were not really, that Scion had something to do with that. Oh, are you...
Apologies, I'm back.
Are you on fire? Like, you're going to be
No,
okay?
I'm not literally on fire. I just had to tell somebody what to do to stop the fire. So sorry about that.
That was quick.
That was a very quick call.
I wish I had the fire putting out skills like that. Just be
It
like...
was just pretty much do this, dumbass, and now we're good. So.
Gotcha. That's so I mean, the question, which was an extremely leading and loaded question, as somebody in chat is pointing out here, is that basically, like, let's get out of lawyer mode here. Scion is holding these people accountable. You're saying that they're probably pissed at Scion because he's making them do work and hold them accountable. He's providing value in the sense of a focus group proposal that combines the use of the CSM with a public focus group and gives it direction. And yet we've seen these white paper changes that have come down the pipe in the last couple of weeks, whatever, from CCP Lilu, which on the face of it exclude gaming media, but in practice it only applies to Scion. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about how that worked from a CSM perspective, what your views on it are,
Look, from our perspective, we were given a previous look at a draft of it, and it didn't include that change. And when it came out with that change, by sort of surprise, I think people probably saw my tweet asking Lilu, so, since we didn't actually see this before during the feedback, explain to me what this means. What does gaming media mean? And she went through a lot of flip-flops and gyrations, and we tried to pin her down, and I essentially said, so do you have any specific sites in mind? because frankly, I wanted her to just call the ball on this one. And she said, well, I'll have to talk to legal, which I'll be frank as a lawyer. When I hear that, my first instinct is what you're saying is, I really don't want to say anything, and I'm going to go pretend, and because I'm completely full of it. Is what that means. And there's no good answer to this, so I'm going to go punt to legal. Because the real answer is...
Two lawyers on the show, there's no legal force in the white paper. Like, I don't have to run my FC reform threads that I might write or my directors might write by the legal department in Goonswarm because they have no force of law. The white paper is a theory document. There's no reason why you would actually need to talk to CCP legal to do anything with it because it's...
And the fact that she punted to that in mid-Twitter stream when a couple people asked her was pretty indicative. And I said to people, inside the CSM, outside the CSM, I said, you watch. This is going to be, by the time they get done gerrymandering what is and what isn't EVE Media, it's going to be TMC.
Right.
And sure enough, Scion is excluded.
And not just TMC.
Nobody else is that I'm aware of. So.
Nobody else on TMC, just Scion, because they're very pointedly. I confronted Lilu in the CSM Slack channel on Tweetfleet Slack. Because
I heard about it. I wasn't there for it.
My response, and I think that this is something that everyone should do, society would be a little bit more direct all the way around, is that when people are being passive-aggressive, that means that they do not want to discuss what they're doing openly. So whenever I see anybody doing something that's passive-aggressive, i.e. instead of saying I don't like Scion because of whatever reason, I'm going to try to alter the rules to get rid of Scion, no Scions allowed, they don't want to be confronted. They don't want to be told openly in a public discussion that we see what is happening, we are not fooled, and we understand what is being done. How do you account for what does this say about your behavior, about your judgment?
I think it's disrespectful, to be honest. I think that the way it was handled was disrespectful. I think that the way they have gone about doing it was wrong and disrespectful and hiding the ball, really. And it comes down to that same basic issue, which is if somebody who has done literally nothing bad to you, I mean, they've broken no rules, they've leaked nothing, they've done nothing, but you just don't want them on the CSM anymore because they've essentially proposed something that seems like work to you and you don't want to deal with it. First, they tried to undercut it with the, we'll just do it with devs. Then they tried to undercut it with the, you just go away, Scion. If you go away, maybe the idea will go away. And
now, when we say they tried to undercut it, is there anybody besides the CSM coordinator that we're talking about here?
Well, I mean, I think that there's clearly some support in CCC for CPP other than her for undercutting those ideas. Otherwise, there wouldn't be people running those focus groups, right? I mean, the evidence sort of speaks for itself. But I don't think it's everybody. I think there are people at CCP who are good communicators who want to talk to people and get decent feedback. And frankly, that's all anybody wants them to have, but there seems to be a strong resistance in certain areas about listening to anything anybody else has to say, frankly.
What can you tell us about the views? I mean, I know you can't speak for other CSMs, but in this controversy, can you tell our viewers maybe something about the views on the council regarding the gerrymandering of the white paper to get rid of Scion? Can you speak to...
I think there are definitely other CSM members who are sort of disgusted by the whole thing. I won't speak for them specifically because that's sort of the deal we have with each other. But I definitely heard feedback from other folks that they found the whole situation a bit disgusting. They found the lack of communication in some cases that's been going on that sort of turned the whole term on its head here at the end to be very disturbing. And they feel like a lot of the work they've put in, which in some cases has been a lot of work, sort of didn't amount to much, which is a shame.
Well, you mentioned earlier that like you think this was aimed at Scion. Do you think it's aimed at Scion, or do you think it's aimed at TMC as a whole?
Well, I think it's mostly aimed at Scion, but I think there's a side slap there at TMC. I call it a warning shot, which, is sort of they want it. I'm sure they would love to chill criticism. And I've seen it because, when you criticize or you open up with saying, look, I think you're just not paying attention to the concerns of players, and you get, stop causing drama as the response. That's not drama, that's my job. That's theoretically why you have me here. If the reality is that you're not interested in hearing from me, then just end the thing. It's useless at that point. And that's been I I don't see any momentum there for turning it into something useful. So my response is, well, then stop at least using it as a PR sword and shield and be honest with your players and say, we're just not interested in hearing from you. Or if you are interested in hearing from you and you just don't like us, you should still end it. And you should find a better method if you're talking to your players that doesn't involve essentially lying to them about their representation. So I just find it to be poor PR. Like I said, they're entitled to do it however they want. It is clearly their company. And I'm entitled to stop subscribing at the point where I feel like it's not very useful or not very fun. And so they have to keep that in mind with their customers. And I think at some point, certain people there have forgotten that we are customers and think we're a captive audience. And I find that deeply disturbing.
Oh, I think I heard this somewhere else. I remember it was a while back that I heard this, and it was brought up that CCP typically has always gotten everything for free, and so they've kind of slid into this this funnel that they expect the players just to keep creating content for them.
I think it's interesting because I feel like one of the responses I've gotten on the CSM when I raised the issue of why aren't we making is nobody making an effort to put things together and try to open these lines of communication is sort of, well, you kind of have to make it your own. You have to figure out a way to make it useful, or you could just quit if you don't feel like it's useful, which is sort of a weak way of saying, hey, I guess I don't feel like doing any work. You guys make it work. And I think that is an attitude, as you point out, that is in some ways, unfortunately, stretched to the entire game, which is, hey, you guys make it work. We're just going to throw this stuff at you. And okay, but again, I think it forgets the concept of we're customers. We don't have to pay you money. And yeah, we have a lot of years invested in it, so we may be reluctant to do something about that. But what I see increasingly when I talk to people who are just find the state of Null to be a little bit disappointing at the moment, and the knowledge that nothing's going to be done about it for a while because they're working on Citadels, which I understand. You have limited development resources. You got to put them somewhere, and Citadels do look cool. But there's a lot of people who aren't very happy about it, who don't feel like anything's going to be done about it for a while, and are, as a result, walking. So
yeah,
that's
good.
You go, Les. You haven't. I don't want you to go say this. I know that it's a couple lawyers here talking about CSM shit, and that's not necessarily like hangover fuel.
It's all good. I was just gonna say, with them continuing on the CSM this next year, at least, how do they fix what they've screwed up this year?
Well, I made a number of proposals, and I know Scion has. One of my proposals is essentially stop treating a lot of this stuff like NDA. You don't have to worry about leaks if you've told everybody. And a lot of it's just not that important to keep NDA. I think that cuts down on your number of leaks. Make sure that you're really just not telling people the stuff that should be NDA, things like build costs, that little 5% of stuff that really needs to be kept quiet. Don't let it slip. Keep it to yourself. Then that's not going to be leaked. There's that small area in between where you can work with the CSM and say, hey, we need a quick opinion about something we're going to release in a week. I need you to keep it NDA for a week. That minimizes the amount of time somebody has to be a pain to you, and any leak in a week isn't going to slip far enough that anybody's going to matter. So if you treat it that way, you've automatically sort of created a methodology where you've minimized any impact of a leak, and you've minimized the chances of a real leak. And frankly, you've minimized the amount of work you have to do, because thinking about all this stuff as NDA when you'd be better off getting widespread feedback from the entire population is just way better. You should be doing it that way. And take advantage, if you're going to keep the CSM, take advantage of their connections, because they're all people who got votes from thousands of your paying customers. So use them, let them help you with these focus groups that are currently dying on the vine and moderating them. We held a pretty successful one, Sort and I, on a couple of issues right before all that, where it was quick. It was a week. We had everybody in. We answered a number of questions for Fox 4 about what we'd like to see on changes to the crest system for FCs. We developed a short paper that said, here's our conclusions, see in order what we think you can do versus important, with a sprinkling of what we'd really like to see. He took that advice. He's working on it, apparently, and it was productive. Those are the sorts of things we can do for you.
I was actually part of the Fox 4 or focus group that you and Sort Dragon put together. It was really, really nice, and I liked it a lot better than the Capital focus group that I'm part of now, because right now there's like 40 people in that focus group and just way too many people talking. And it was like, with the small group that you had for these for Fox 4, you had a set of like small, concise points. It was really, really organized, and instead of jumping around from topic to topic, we just kind of went down the list. So I'd like to see more of that.
And you kind of have to have an agenda to run a meeting, otherwise it turns into chaos.
You have to have an agenda, and you have to have a moderator. And the fact of the matter is that, and I should point out that the devs aren't going to be able to moderate those things, not because they're hateful people who don't want to moderate those things. When the hell do they have the time? Even if you have the best intentions, they're busy. If you can get an hour of their time and say, dude, here's what we figured out over a week. We've narrowed it down to like a list of 5, like, please, CCP pleases for you. Take it, run with it. Tell us what you can and can't do. Wow, that's pretty useful for them. If it's, I have to watch a Slack channel 24/7 and try to pick out the useful pieces of information from 40 people's blather, not so much.
Are you exploding? As everything?
I'm exploding again. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and go on a little clarification here. So, I disagree with the idea that TMC is being targeted, or that this is a shot across the bow, have anything to do with the Mittani.com as a media website or anything like that, because that's dumb, right? In the games industry, you don't typically, now just because something is dumb doesn't mean it would happen, but Lily was very pointed once she was put on the spot and asked for clarification that this restriction only impacted Scion, and that it would not actually impact any of the TMC writers. So one way that they could try to mess with us, if it was actually about TMC and not Scion and the Imperium, would be to make a rule in such a way that anybody working for TMC just in any capacity couldn't be on there. So I don't think it actually has anything to do with the Mittani.com as a gaming media site. I think it's about Scion. And one of the things is, like you say, okay, well, it's not really targeted to, it could be a shot across the bow at the Imperium, but why not also try to exclude Thoric or anybody else who's from the Imperium on the CSM currently, is that out of the population of people from the Imperium on the CSM currently, the only one who is even considering running again was actually Scion. So some people are talking about how we should be boycotting the CSM or things like that. If the attempt is to disenfranchise Scion and disenfranchise the representatives of the Imperium, the reaction is not to sit quietly in a corner and go, oh, we're just going to do this. If Scion is so fearful to these people and whoever he has upset by suggesting accountability and focus and actually doing his job as a zealous advocate, I see instead an opportunity for us to leverage the outrage over this just weak gerrymandering attempt, transparent, see-through, and use that outrage to energize the Imperium as a whole. This is something that affects us as a community. This affects the Imperium specifically. It does not affect the rest of the population that would be voting. So here you have a situation where the CSM, the number of votes in general, has been declining, and you have just slapped in the face and pissed on one of the longer-serving representatives and higher figures in the Imperium, and thus everybody who voted for him. So sure, great, you slap the Imperium in our faces. You come up with a crap gerrymandering rule that the CSM doesn't buy as being a legitimate change, that we don't buy as being anything other than it is. If you will just vote the hell out of the thing, and the rest of the population won't. Because why does Joe Hisek Puppy give a crap about the white paper change? Joe Hisek Puppy is going to vote in the CSM at the same level as he has always voted in previous elections, because this issue only impacts our people. So great. If we're going to play dirty pool, we'll play dirty pool, and we'll say, okay, you have tried to screw us. You have tried to hide behind this thinly veiled policy change. And we're just going to blow the hell out of the election. And if you don't like having Scion, imagine what's going to happen when you have to deal with Aerith every day. Have fun with that.
Yeah, I've met Aerith in person. Good luck.
Yeah. No, I think that, we're delighted to engage with the process. We will vote, we will campaign, we will be doing everything that we normally do, and we've got a fairly good record of getting people on the CSM. Normally, we've had challenges the last couple of CSM elections because there hasn't been that much groundswell excitement about it because, long process and what have you. But in this case, this is basically, here's a crowbar made of outrage. Now, please don't use this crowbar.
Well, here's what I don't understand about the whole rule is, so they're trying to tell us it's not about Scion, but in theory, I haven't heard any, let's say Bob Mond's run again, because he generally does every year. Does anybody within the sound of my voice, believe Bob Mom wouldn't leak or wouldn't just, be a big problem for them. And yet, as far as I know, he's not prohibited from running. So
you have like, I don't know what's happened. Like your Titans are tackled or like something awful. I'm gonna actually go
client
check.
lawyer thing. Sorry,
Okay,
non-EVE related.
Well, what Shrar said is that Thoric is secretly CCP legal, and that's why they're blowing up his phone right now.
He's getting all the calls like, what are you saying?
I think I've probably blown my chances of working for CCP legal today. What do you think?
Yeah, I probably think so too. Retribution Zero is saying in chat, and I think assuming it's being sarcastic of, why is this being used as a political tool instead of what's best for the game? I think it's kind of funny actually interacting in Tweetfleet Slack and seeing people talk about their ideas. It is a representative, democratically elected player council, so of course there's politics, and if you try to exclude a large section of the voting populace, you have, as a member of that voting population, you have two options, right? Option number one is you sit there quietly and take it and sit down and shut up, which is clearly the intent, is Scion can't be on the council, and so instead of talking about this, we should meekly accept and not try to hold people accountable and not have our advocates represent our people. The other option is to call it out on the carpet for what it is, make sure everybody who is affected by this, which is all of our people, know about it, know why it was done, and then instead of boycotting, because a lot of people in Tweetfleet Slack and in chat have been saying, oh, you should boycott, because they want us to not vote.
Apologies,
they want
I got
us.
another phone call.
Okay. They want us to not vote. I'll just rant. They want us to not vote. They want us to not participate. They want no Scions, and if they're lucky, they would be able to get us to not engage in the process, not get any representatives, and there would be no troublesome Scions, no troublesome anyone, or just people, who will sit there and obey and be nice, like presumably Gorski Kar is, and they'll just sort of sit there and do whatever is wanted. But that's not how we're going to do things. We're not going to boycott the process. We will vote the hell out of this because we are the best at voting the hell out of things. And we will send probably more representatives from the Imperium than we have in a long-ass time. And then we'll just see what rules they try to change to get rid of our representatives. Like, this is not wise. Somebody is saying, my narrative is so weak that you're a shadow of your former self. That's actually true. I am a shadow of my former self. I am it's tough being a figurehead. I don't really do anything. And the reason why I'm up here and trying to gin up all this false outrage is because Scion is actually really in charge of the Imperium. And I have been told that if I do not get up here and rant my heart out, if I don't just do it, give it the best try that I've got, that they're going to take away my red shirt allocation. So it's pretty much either I get up here and I do Scion's bidding and push that narrative, or my precious shirts will be taken from me. Please send help.
I mean, we are sending Aerith and Zenuria, which I think is a pretty good team in retaliation.
Well, it's not really about retaliation, because the thing is, the ballot is going to change now. This is the thing. We talked about sending Aerith, Scion, and Zenuria earlier, but we were discussing on earlier in the show, the Imperium ballot is a process involving lots of math hammer, right? You really have to go through and crunch the numbers and optimize the STV vote. So we know we're going to be sending Aerith. We're sending Zenuria on the ballot. Where they're going to be in there and who else is going to be in there in the block vote is not something that's been decided yet, because we simply haven't run the numbers and consolidated our candidates. So you'll see. There'll be, we're going to make a good go of it. We have fireside chats. We have the meta show. We have a lot more. We haven't used forum interrupts, actually, in a couple of years. We used to have, whenever there's a CSM election, when we really wanted to obliterate the vote, whenever you go onto our forums, if you hadn't voted yet, there would be an interrupt that would basically be like a interdiction screen saying, go here, vote here, do this. Which always boosted turnout massively, and we're going to bring that back this year. Should be good. I think that we'll do a lot to boost overall turnout.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, if they think getting rid of Scion gets rid of the point of view or makes them not work or whatever excuse they've come up in their head to make sure that that's what they wanted to do, I don't think this gets them there. I hope they find that out next year. I don't have the energy to be the guy who does it, that's for sure, because I'll tell you that there's nothing. I think somebody said that there's just no institution that CCP has set up that makes their most energetic and interested players dislike them more than the CSM once they're on it. But I think it's an entirely true statement.
Well, I mean, the CSM, do you guys get anything for your service? Because you used to get a trip to FanFest and all that for.
You get flown out to the summits if you're invited, and you get, I think, you get a year of. You get a year, your character that's on the CSM gets plaxed for a year. I can't try to think if there was anything else. I guess when, at EVE Vegas, you got a free ticket if you turned up, so for the basic stuff. But that's about it.
The summits aren't exactly like a party time. I mean, well, I managed to party the hell out of the summits anyway because that's what I do back in the day on CSM 6. But like, you know, they're a lot of work. You get up there, you get up in the morning early, you're in meetings all day talking about extremely complicated, gritty things. Like it's an endurance run. It's basically 8 hours of meetings day after day after day. In a foreign country, and like going to Iceland, particularly in the off season, isn't exactly like a party trip. Like if you go to Iceland in February, it's not like, oh wow, I'm in Iceland in February. This is great. The sun doesn't come up, and it's cold, rainy, snowy, blizzardy, awful, and dark. Right? Like it's not party time. You end up like, popping as many vitamin D pills as you can just to try to, not get seasonal affective disorder.
Well, I would have looked forward to seeing some of the CSM members and talking to them. But yeah, February in Iceland is not.
A vacation.
Not a vacation, especially when you live in Los Angeles. So.
Yeah, seriously. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that we had you on to answer some of these questions because I actually didn't know some of the things that you were revealing. Just as a quick follow-up here, so to clarify, when these white paper changes which specifically excluded Scion in effect, were they presented to the CSM first at all for discussion and comment?
No. First time we saw them was publicly with everybody else.
So what you're saying is that CCP Lilu, who has said so in Tweetfleet Slack, personally rewrote this and had been working on this for a long time based upon what she said. And all these logs are publicly available. You can see the Tweetfleet Slack CSM logs. Somebody can find the link and drop them. So she says that she's been working on this for a very long time to revise the white paper. And you are telling me that the CSM, which is the most affected entity by the white paper, was not consulted about this.
Yeah, well, the last draft we saw didn't have any of those changes in it. It was fresh as well. I think, like as my tweet made clear, it was fresh to all of us. We were all sort of offended by it. I mean, by and large. So.
Well, that's interesting. Well, I'm glad to hear that the CSM as a whole is offended by it because I committed in Tweetfleet Slack yesterday. I said that I hope that when we get on the Meta Show, that you will tell me that the entire CSM is actually united behind this change, that you had been consulted by it, and that you did not believe that Scion had been unfairly targeted. Because since I had said that I felt that Scion had been unfairly targeted and that this was crap, that if the other player representatives thought that I was wrong, seeing behind the NDA that with the discussion and the understanding, that I would publicly and loudly apologize to CCP Lilu and in Tweetfleet Slack and let everybody know that I had misjudged and that people who had more information than me knew what was up and that, whoops, sorry. So I'm glad I don't have to make that apology, but it's a shame for the game. It would be better for the game as a whole if I was wrong and that the Imperium was wrong in our perceptions of Scion being unfairly targeted. So here we are. Laz is having lots of excitement going on.
Well, I think if they were more honest, if they said, "Hey, we've decided we really do need to exclude all gaming media," and they actually excluded all gaming media, including EVE media, at least that would be a rule, right? That broadly affected everybody the same way. But this gerrymandered
that would make sense. I mean,
this gerrymandered crap to just basically target Scion makes zero sense to me. I mean, it makes sense, not in a good way. I admire the craft, not the reasoning.
I think that that's a good one. I'm not really sure I admire the craft. It's very well done. It's very specifically targeted. But that is a reasonable argument. Like if the company wants to exclude gaming media from the council, because in the old version of the white paper, competitors for people working for other gaming companies were excluded from the council. And so if they decided to do that, the way that you would process that in an entirely reasonable way is say, okay, guys, we want to change the white paper. You consult with the CSM, let them know, and give feedback and say, we're thinking that for the next term, we want no gaming media, nobody from fan sites, or if they are just fan sites, that's okay. Here's how you distinguish this with definitions. What's the feedback? And you engage the CSM in the process of altering the CSM white paper because the white paper is supposed to be sort of a stakeholder pact between CCP and the player base. And we know this because the guy who wrote the white paper originally was, I believe, Peter Johannes Askersson, gigantic Viking dude. And he's no longer with the company, and that's why I think Lilu is now running it for the last couple of years.
I'll say that I also feel personally, and I probably can't get into the details of because that would be in sort of internal discussion stuff, but I feel like it's part of, based on prior drafts, a pattern and practice of trying to implement a rule that would exclude certain people because there were certain rules that were fed to us that we said, well, what the hell? And those rules were then tossed, and then without consultation, this was thrown in at the last minute. So there's reason I have to, beyond the fact that the way it's targeted, that I feel it is what it is. And it's because it's the third or fourth attempt at some sort of rule to exclude basically Scion. The others were a little too broad, might have excluded other people, so I guess they picked this.
Yeah.
I know we're running slightly over here, but just one last question, which is, because we started a little bit late, why is Scion in particular so scary to these guys?
I don't know, but I really think it's because he had presented what looked like an effective way to sort of make, well, let me put it this way, I just think he'd presented a effective way to hold them a little bit accountable, which is in theory what the CSM is for, and also to create agency and a useful purpose for the CSM. And those things would have created work for certain people. And I honestly believe that that's the reason that you're seeing it not happen now.
Well, we've seen a flight from accountability and work in Goonswarm as well when we implemented policies and procedures to be able to determine who was working and who wasn't in the directory. There's a whole bunch of like, oh my God, how dare I need to actually do work if I'm a director bullshit drama as well. So thank you so much for coming on, Thoric. It has been illuminating and horrifying. This is, everything that you have helped illustrate for us and reveal about what's going on is actually really horrible bad news. So guys.
Coming up next is the boat show. Big shout out to Blue Microphones for sponsoring the show, as well as CCP for giving us the awesome pirate rookie ship codes to give away. If you want those, make sure you message the channel so we can get those sent out to you. And thanks again, Thoric, for coming on. So, guys, coming up right now, the Big Red Boat.
The boat show! This will be a bit more of a pick-me-up. The boat show is always good news and is always fun.
He's the most happy person I've never ever met.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. So, guys, we'll see you next weekend. You have a good night.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.